What's a sign that you immediately had to go to the hospital? The worst headache of your life, which came on very quickly, also known as a thunderclap headache, even with no other symptoms. This needs to be looked at immediately. Could be any range of things, but what they are most concerned with is a ruptured aneurysm. For about a 3-month period I randomly started getting these anytime I would orgasm. Doctors were incredibly worried it was due to a brain aneurysm putting pressure on my brain due to high blood pressure during intimate moments. Had an MRI and I'm all good. Still never found out what was causing it. These headaches are no joke though. Can barely see. Can't stand. Feels like your head is being crushed in a vice. Really not fun. Sudden hearing loss. The faster you get to the hospital the better the chances of reversing it, statistically. In my case I left it 2 weeks, and I'm now living with tinnitus. Surprised I had to scroll so far to find this. Seems minor but yeah. Any extreme change in hearing warrants an emergency visit to the doctor. With sudden hearing loss there's a 72-hour window to start treatment, and leaving it often results in permanent deafness. No one takes this one seriously enough. Sorry to hear about your tinnitus. I'm in the same boat. Suddenly getting a massive headache and you aren't prone to them. A friend's work colleague died at work. She had a headache. Took a paracetamol then lied down in the fetal position. She started foaming from the mouth, and by then it was too late. Brain aneurysm. Haven't seen this one mentioned yet. If your newborn spits up bright green, solid sign there is a major intestinal blockage, even without any other symptoms, and there is a small window to get that corrected before death. I have forgotten mallet from my stable class, but I do remember that. You were told 48 hours ago that you had gastroenteritis, stomach flu, and you did everything the doc said, and not only don't you feel better, you feel worse. There are a lot of things it could be, but gastroenteritis is probably not it, and some of the other possibilities are potentially lethal. That happened to me. Called 111, and they sent a paramedic. Was told to rest and keep hydrated. 9 hours later I was in resus with sepsis, hypertension, hypoglycemia, and my kidneys and liver shutting down. Wife had a pain in her shoulder and told me about it. Said it was uncomfortable, but not a big deal. I told her to send her doctor a message. Went in for an appointment immediately. She had internal bleeding from an ectopic pregnancy and had about 12 ounces of blood floating around in her. I had that shoulder pain a few days before going into the hospital. I went in only when I was in so much pain I couldn't sit or walk anymore and started throwing up. It was internal bleeding from an ectopic pregnancy as well, and they had to do an emergency surgery. You were bit by an animal. Always assume it was rabid. If you don't get rabies treatment within something like 48 hours you could cross the threshold into guaranteed death. This is alarmist for many reasons and plays into Reddit's obsession with rabies. 1. Only mammals can spread it, not all animals. 2. Rodents and legamorphs, rabbits, always never going to spread it to you. 3. Doctors in your local area will know what animals are prone to having it and might not recommend. 4. For anyone thinking about being in a room with a bat meets the criteria. This is now only true if you were asleep or if you are a baby or very disabled. 5. Rabies travels through nerves. A bite/scratch on the foot will take longer to reach the CNS than one to the neck. You need the shot before symptoms show. 6. If you are American the average cost of rabies treatment is $3,800. Talk to a doctor if bitten by an animal. Well, my appendix just exploded inside of me 3 days ago, and my tell was that just standing or moving at all became excruciatingly painful. So if normal activities are causing pain, especially severe pain, like I was feeling, maybe consider calling 911. If you are completely menopaused and you start bleeding like a period, it is not a period and you need to go to the hospital ASAP. Also, if you have been electrified, but you feel fine, still go to the hospital, because blood clots are no jokes. My mom had this happen last fall. She basically had a heavy period for months, even though she hasn't had her period in a few years. Turns out it was cancer in the uterus. She had surgery to remove her uterus and she should be fine now, thankfully. You took a new medicine and your throat is closing up. Anaphylaxis can kill you. Had the same happen to me last year. Had a chest infection, doctor gave me this medication. I can't think of the name of it and too lazy to go get it, but I took it how I should have. The first time, I got a really itchy body rash after a while. It felt like I was being bitten by insects. Second time same thing, but again didn't think much of it. Third dose I'm head to toe covered in hives, and I'm as red as a tomato. Next thing I know my throat starts itching, and I told my mum, and she called her friends at work to meet us halfway from the hospital. Only then did I draw the correlation. Rectal bleeding. Several things can cause this, from hemorrhoids all the way up to massive gastrointestinal hemorrhage. Some people won't go to the hospital out of shame and embarrassment in these cases and end up bleeding out in their house. Go to the hospital. To add to this, especially if the blood is dark, that means it's much further up the bowels than your anus, which can be a sign of many things, including bowel cancer. Just get to hospital. They've seen it all before. Your asshole isn't special. Blue nails. Pale face. I was young then and didn't know what's happening. Mom rushed me to hospital right away, where I was immediately jabbed in the butt. Nurse said any later it would be too late. Course, contaminated food. Very dark brown urine. Went into urgent care over 2 weeks ago because I had a rash/fever, and they told me it was probably a virus. The next day my urine had turned dark brown, and I went to the because I knew it was a bad sign. TM. Turns out I had sepsis and a life-threatening drug allergy from the antibiotic I was on. 2 surgeries and 9 days in the hospital later I'm alive because I recognized brown pee as bad. Sudden increase in floaters in one, or both, and or something like light flashes in your eyes or eye. I'm to call the eye hospital I go to, but call an eye clinic or hospital or room and move fast. Point might be a retina detaching. Not a bad fix if they catch it in time. Very time critical. My eyes have a few issues, so pretty much every time I see my ophthalmologist he reminds me to call if I even suspect it is happening. Happened to my mother. Caught in time, not a big deal. Pupils different sizes I believe means you need to be in hospital right now. Not always true. Went to the nurse for a headache. She checked my eyes, saw my pupils, called my mom. Came back and told me my mom was on her way and we'd be going to the Get to the Nurse checked my eyes just to make sure they were uneven. Asked about my headache. She asked me if I was dizzy, if my neck was stiff. She seemed worried. Doc comes in, has me rotate my head. All seems fine. Asked me to follow the light. Still seemed fine. Asked me a few other questions about my previous day and the current day. Asked if there were any slips of time I can't remember recently. Now it seemed not as okay. Starts asking if I have a history of seizures or passing out randomly and vomiting randomly. Nurse just laughs and says no, it's nothing at all. You're fine. Your pupils are just naturally uneven in size a little bit and you just happen to have a headache. When it was first noticed, he did explain that there are several issues that could have been more serious, but I wasn't having any other symptoms or had any previous issues that would contribute to it. Any kind of cognitive issue. A friend of kind passed away recently because of a brain tumor roughly a year after diagnosed. First signs were word finding issues, lasting pain. Same friend. A year before his brain tumor, he had tumor on the lower part of his spine. His spine hurt for years. Never had it checked out until it was late. The treatment for that made his brain tumor untreatable because the combination of the 2 treatments would have killed him even faster. I feel so bad for those of you in the US who are saying things that are so insanely dangerous that it shouldn't even need to be said. You need to go to the hospital. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here about to give a list of comparatively small things that could be an indication of something bigger, because in my country you don't get charged for going to the So when things seem off, the hospital is a realistic option to get to the bottom of it, whereas in the US you'll are waiting till you're on death's door before going. Even though it's completely treatable when you catch it early. I don't even care if I get downvoted. I just genuinely find this sad.